next guest, who is a renowned international scholar, Kristinn Thórisson. He's a professor of computer science in Reykjavik University. He has also founded an institute of intelligent machines in Iceland. He has 30 years of experience in AI research and development. Throughout those years, he has worked for a number of global companies, MIT, NASA being among them. He advises Icelandic and Swedish governments on AI, and he himself, with his team, has developed a new kind of AI platform which is able to learn out of its own mistakes. So very well-known and educated scholar, and today he will explain us a bit more about the self-explaining AI, how it works, how it will be built, and how he claims it will change the privacy game. So please, Kristinn, go on. Your 10 minutes.
Oh, very pleased to be here. Thank you very much. Yeah, so can everyone see my slides? Everything okay? Shall we launch into it? All right, good. So we don't have a lot of time. I will try to convince you that self-explaining AI will change the privacy game. At the same time, I will also try to convince you that self-explaining AI will happen, but I won't tell you when. The time horizon, perhaps, for this talk is somewhere between 2 and 20 years, but no more than that. First, we'll start with some relevant facts. So contemporary AI, which primarily is artificial neural networks, reinforcement learning, etc. Those of you in AI know these terms probably. These systems really can't explain themselves. They can't explain by themselves either, and many of them can't even hardly be explained by their developers. One of the fundamental problems and limitations with these is that there is no cause-effect knowledge in these systems. They are exclusively statistics-based. And properly described, they really are more like a function of approximation than intelligence. In contrast, self-explaining AI will solve some of these things, but it has not yet been developed. We are talking about a self-explaining AI that essentially can create useful explanations that reference real-world phenomena that can be verified. And when I say real-world, with reference to the prior discussion about the metaverse, what I mean is essentially that it can be verified and that it can be demonstrated to be useful. Now, what do I mean by the privacy game? I don't think I need to tell you that, but for others who might stumble on this lecture at some point down the line, let me just run through it real quickly. The world's information is being moved into cyberspace, essentially computer-readable form, and which means it can be accessed by anything that gives you that works as a portal into the digital realm. Break-ins and crimes in this space follow somewhat different paths than in physical space. The police force needs to upgrade itself. They need to have new tools and new education. And so the privacy game, when I use that term, I mean everything that surrounds this information and how you want to control that information, where it goes, who can access it, what it's used for at what time, etc. So the privacy game is a complex task, and it needs to meet everyone's need for privacy of data, including company plans, intellectual property development, new developments, ideas, etc., as well as individuals about their own health, professional life, personal life, etc. All right. So contemporary AI And by that, I mean mostly artificial neural networks. It's like deep neural networks and all sorts of variants of that. Where are we at with these technologies? Let me just give you a quick overview of the status of development and research. We start with natural intelligence because, of course, the prime example of intelligence that everyone seems to agree on to call it intelligence is human intelligence. I've had arguments with people who said that dogs are not intelligent, and I've had arguments with people who said that cockroaches are extremely intelligent. Now, so that's a wide range of opinions, but everyone seems to agree on human intelligence. So let's start there. So when we think about natural intelligence, we have a lot of concepts that we use without hesitation in everyday conversation, like control, biological features of the mind. If someone is drunk or under some influence of some drugs, these are chemicals that basically change their cognitive functioning. There's concepts like understanding, explanation, consciousness, pattern matching, recognizing letters, etc., evolution, the list is long, but these are some high-level concepts. Now, what about contemporary AI? What's the current status? How many of these does modern AI cover? Well, actually, it's pretty embarrassing or exciting, depending on how you look at it, because none of those in that list, even evolution, the relation of evolution to intelligence is not very well understood. So what remains is pattern matching, and so the current modern AI techniques are really good at pattern matching. That's about it. All right. So the challenge in a nutshell. Let me tell you just a short list again of the things that remain to be researched and properly introduced into AI technologies. Because these systems, there hardly exists any modern system that does the following, two or more in the following list well and integrates them in a single system. And for general intelligence, what you want is at least a single system that does at least all of these. So time, control, causality, reasoning, cumulative learning, that is, learning that improves with new information automatically. Transversal knowledge, that basically you can bring any knowledge to any problem that if it's relevant, and you can figure out that some knowledge you have is relevant in a certain circumstance and not in another circumstance, and incremental information presentation. For instance, that's the kind of thing that I'm doing right now. So by lacking these, current systems cannot really explain. Now, and I'll get to that a little bit more about what I mean by that. But essentially, keep this in mind. A valid explanation can be verified. It's sort of like, how you figure out if a scientist is lying. You do the experiment. Now, so the challenge in a nutshell that, modern AI may be cost-effective, worth our time, better than any alternative for whatever purposes we are using it, But because of those limitations that I went through, enforcing, monitoring, and ensuring privacy laws with these systems is really very costly, and sometimes, and most of the time, actually, almost impossible. So contemporary AI doesn't really match the requirements for monitoring or enforcing privacy laws. And if you can't automate that, well, then doing by hand is the only option. And this is why modern AI will not change the privacy game. In fact, it may actually make it more difficult. So here are my 3 claims. You see 2 of them right now. Self-explaining AI will be developed. And this is machines that produce empirically valid explanations. And as I said, quite possibly within 20 years. It will consist of a unified framework. And now I'm giving you a little bit of an insight into how to make such a system. It will have to be able to do causal modeling autonomously. It will have to be able to do reasoning about time and cause. and it must be able to learn in a self-supervised way in an incremental fashion. And these kinds of systems will change the privacy game. So what is self-explaining AI and where can I get it, you might ask? Right, well, wouldn't you like to know? Just get in line like everyone else. No, actually, I'm just kidding. Self-explaining AI, and of course, in the limited time we have, I'm not going to be able to go very deeply, but self-explaining AI rests on three key technological advances. And of course, as always, the devil's in the details. So there's a lot of things that, as well, that we might have to cover here to really do a proper treatment. But let's do these three top-level ones. Dynamic ampliative reasoning, that is on-demand reasoning over acquired knowledge. Cumulative learning, that is the knowledge that is being reasoned about has been acquired autonomously by the system. And efficient handling of spatiotemporal cause and effect knowledge. Okay, so those three, once we have a better handle on those, we're getting closer to self-explaining AI. So these will enable an AI that can create useful explanations with reference to known causal factors that can be empirically verified. Take your pick of, what do you call it? Real, true, useful, whatever. So then the conclusion here, will self-explaining AI change the privacy game? Now consider the following. If you combine those three principles and a couple more in the right way, you have a single system that can solve a major problem with modern AI. This system can identify causal factors that can be empirically verified. And if you combine these properly in a single system, that system is capable of real explanation. That is valid, verifiable explanation. It can identify potential causes, potential threats, unlawful activities, undesired side effects, etc. This is all going to be open up by this technology. So the answer to this question is yes, self-explaining AI will change the privacy game because a machine that can explain can be tasked with monitoring, predicting, guarding, or even counteracting unlawful activities. It can explain not only its own experience, but its own actions, its own predictions and warnings. It will have knowledge about its own knowledge. So this machine can be made to follow the rules autonomously and provide valid explanations if it fails. Its performance can be monitored for free or at the cost of full automation, which should be very, very low because full automation is essentially what we're after. And this changes the privacy game. It doesn't make it only more effective, but at a much lower cost. So the answer to the question, again, is yes. The machine can explain and be tasked with monitoring, guarding, etc., and it can explain its own experience and its own actions and predictions. So this will change the privacy game. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Kristinn. We have a question for you. It's a very interesting topic and new topic. What's your opinion? Do you think that once this is invented, once you have the self-explanatory AI, will it require to increase or to decrease the need for privacy controls? Because we will have to control the self-explanatory AI, right? What's your opinion?
Yes, yes. That's a good question. It will decrease the need, or it will. Let's put it this way: it will open up new opportunities for automating some of the things that are extremely hard to do by hand, and either because they're too expensive, too slow, or simply just insurmountably complex. So yes, I think this will be good news for the world of privacy.
Yeah, Okay, yeah, I think that too. Thank you a lot, Chris. It was a pleasure to have you on board.